just let a few folks still join us here. Hi, everyone. I'm Rachel with the Progressive Change Campaign Committee. Thank you so much for joining us tonight or this afternoon, wherever you are, making this a part of your weekly routine. This is the highlight of my week, so I hope it's one of at least the top 3 highlights of your weeks. So we are so thrilled to be joined by an amazing woman, an amazing candidate, Keeda Haynes, tonight, running for Congress in Tennessee's 5th Congressional District. A lot of you folks are pros, so you know the drill, but we want as much engagement as possible. So if your video isn't on, please go ahead and flip it on so we can all see each other. When we get to the Q&A section, I'll go ahead and call on your name, ask you to unmute yourself so you can ask Keeda your question directly, and then join us via video if you aren't already. And you can go ahead and feel free to send me your question at any point during this conversation. You'll just simply go to the bottom of your screen. It says chat. It'll say Rachel, PCC host. You'll click on me and send me your question. If you're jumping in a little bit late or you have to jump off a little bit early, don't worry about it. I will send you a recording of this. We're also live streaming it. So with that, let me go ahead. I'm going to turn over to our co-founder, Stephanie Taylor. As you folks know, these calls don't cost anything. We think that you'll be inspired by what you hear from Keeda tonight, like we were. So if you are, please consider chipping in what you can to help her campaign. And then please forgive me in advance if I can't get to your question. I will try my very best. I promise I will connect you to the best person from Keeda's campaign if I don't get to your question. So with that, let's go ahead and kick it over to our co-founder, Dr. Stephanie Taylor, and the one that created this entire program. Stephanie?
Thanks, Rachel. Thanks for joining our call tonight, everybody. I'm so pleased tonight to introduce you to Keeda Haynes, who, as Rachel said, is running in Tennessee's 5th Congressional District. She's running against Jim Cooper, who is the Democratic incumbent and current Democratic congressman. And I will talk more about Jim Cooper in a minute, but first let me talk a little bit more about Keeda, because Keeda has an extraordinary life story. When she was 22 years old, she was wrongfully incarcerated for a crime she did not commit, a victim of the war on drugs and federal minimum sentencing guidelines. When she got out of prison, she became a lawyer, she became a public defender, and now she works for an organization that supports children whose parents have been incarcerated or deported. We're so proud to endorse Keeda because she's exactly the kind of person we need in Congress, with the kind of experiences that our leaders should have. When she talks about criminal justice reform, she's lived it. And she's also running on a platform, it's a terrific and well-researched platform. She's running on strong, good progressive issues like Medicare for All and a Green New Deal, but she's also incorporated other issues into her platform, issues that might get less attention but are still important, like guaranteeing that all pregnant women have access to prenatal care, or establishing EPA standards around lead in drinking water for daycares and school systems. So with that said, now that you know a little bit about Keeda, let me talk a little bit about the person that she's running against, Jim Cooper. So Jim Cooper, the Democrat, representing a Democratic seat in a very safe blue district, voted with Trump 40% of the time this Congress. He has taken campaign contributions from the Koch brothers. He has taken campaign contributions from defense contractors who sell military equipment to the police. He's taken campaign contributions from the prison industrial complex. This is a safe blue seat, and it should not be represented by someone like Jim Cooper. So this is a very tough and uphill race, and Jim Cooper is a formidable opponent, but Keeda is the right candidate to support here. And so we're so pleased to endorse her and are very excited for you to meet her tonight as well. So with that, let me welcome Keeda Haynes.
Thank you. I would like to first say good evening to everyone. And I say evening because I'm here in Nashville, and so it's 5 o'clock. So, and I just want to thank Stephanie and Rachel for inviting me to be on this call tonight to speak to everyone about who I am and my race and why it is that I am choosing to run for office at this particular time. And so again, my name is Keeda Haynes, and I am running for Congress in the 5th District in Nashville, Tennessee. I was originally born and raised in Franklin, which is about 20 miles south from Nashville, but I've lived in Nashville since 2006. And as Stephanie mentioned, I work as a legal advisor at Free Hearts, which is a nonprofit organization. It is run by formerly incarcerated women, and I work there to support other formerly incarcerated women and children who have parents that are incarcerated or deported. And we also support other family members and friends who have loved ones that are incarcerated. And we do quite a bit of, advocacy work in the communities around various different social justice issues and various different racial and criminal justice issues. Before I joined Free Hearts, I served my community for 6.5 years as a public defender here in Nashville. And as a public defender, I poured my determination, my energy, and passion into fighting for my clients in the courtroom and in the community. And so this fight to end the inequalities in our racist criminal justice system, it is one that is very personal to me. Because 2 weeks after I graduated from Tennessee State University with a degree in criminal justice and psychology, the first in my family to earn a degree, my parents dropped me off at the gates of Alderson Federal Prison Camp to begin serving a 7-year sentence for a crime that I did not commit. I spent almost 4 years as inmate number 000-17011. And on December 1st of 2006, I was finally released from federal prison after serving almost 4 years. I served 3 years and 10 months. And despite the many barriers to reentry, I enrolled into law school at the Nashville School of Law 2 years after my release. I graduated law school in 2012 and I passed the bar exam, but then I still had to clear the character and fitness examination with the Tennessee Board of Law Examiners. And I heard over and over and over again from lawyers and others in the legal profession that I was unlikely to pass and to get my license. But I refused to quit, and I cleared the character and fitness exam and became a practicing attorney in Nashville in December of 2012, 6 years after I had been released. My fight for justice was only beginning working on the front lines of the criminal justice system as a public defender. I have personally experienced and seen firsthand from my clients and the community how the systems that are in place are designed to keep people like me, people like us, left behind and locked out. And I believe that it is time that we in this district, that we have someone in Washington that is going to represent us in Congress who understands the community and our issues that we are currently facing. I believe that we need somebody in Congress that understands and believes in criminal justice reform. Someone that knows that the United States has the highest incarceration rate in the country with 2.2 million people in jails and prison, and that our very own 37208 here in Nashville has the highest incarceration rate in the nation. And that mass incarceration disproportionately affects Black, brown, and low-income communities. And I have personally experienced these issues, and I have watched these issues destroy families and communities. And experiencing and seeing these disparities, I personally wrote Jim Cooper a letter regarding these various issues and volunteered to work with him and other members of Congress to address these issues. And he met with me, but he did nothing about these issues. That was 4 years ago, when he had the opportunity to be on the front lines of criminal justice reform and to fight for our community and our issues, and not when it became popular to do so. But because of his inaction and his apathetic views at best on criminal justice reform in Congress, I can be counted on that I will not hesitate to work to address the racist policies and procedures that have caused these disparities by eliminating mandatory minimum sentencing laws for drug offenses, by working to deschedule marijuana and shifting resources to community-based alternative programs instead of incarceration, police departments, and the military. I will also work to remove barriers to re-entry and to restore the voting rights of those that have been impacted by the justice system. And I will continuously work and to address and examine all policies and procedures that contribute to the racial inequality at every single stage of the criminal justice system. I also believe that we need someone in Congress that understands economic justice, someone that understands that decent, affordable housing is a basic fundamental right that is out of reach for far too many of us, and that we must assure that all Americans have access to safe, stable, and affordable housing. It is time that we had someone in our district who is going to represent us and understands that stagnant income, that it is a crisis, and we must raise the minimum wage to at least $15 an hour to lift incomes and to grow our economy. Because I don't think that anyone who works a full-time job should live in or near poverty. Being someone who is personally saddled with student loan debt, who with 3 degrees had to work 2 jobs just to meet the minimum threshold of the $80,000 that is required to live comfortably here in Nashville, and my clients and others in the community struggling to make ends meet, that are suffering from homelessness, and others who find themselves locked out and left behind here in this city. I understand these issues, and in Congress, I will work to raise the federal minimum wage to at least $15 an hour, to implement programs that provide various job trainings and financial literacy for low-income communities, and eliminating student loan debt, and investing in communities that have been discriminated against due to racially discriminated policies and practices regarding homeownership. And I will provide additional funding and invest in HBCUs. We need somebody in Congress in this district that really understands healthcare justice, because healthcare is an absolute basic human right. And everyone should have quality healthcare regardless of their income or zip codes, and it should not be tied to their employment. Healthcare should be equitable for everyone in all communities, regardless of their race or income. So now is not the time for us to blame our governor who has not expanded Medicaid, or to blame the Republicans. Now is the time for us to act, particularly when the uninsured rate is at an all-time high and COVID-19 has exacerbated our healthcare crisis. Like Kristen Grimm, the mom who stood outside Jim Cooper's office for over 6 months, whom he would never personally meet with, whose son has had over 26 surgeries, and now she's saddled and crippled with medical debt from the various different children's hospitals and the various different other groups, Moms for Medicare for All, Our Revolution, and other members in this community. I understand this and will work to ensure that everyone has quality health care regardless of their income, their race, their zip code, pre-existing conditions, and that it will not be tied to employment, and that it will be equitable across the board. And not only do we need someone who believes in these things, but also someone who can look at these policies through the lens of an African American, a female, someone from a working class, a first-generation college student, someone with student loan debt, a public defender, an advocate, and someone impacted by the criminal justice system. Otherwise, we just end up with a different version of what we already have. Right now, today in our country, and even here in Nashville, we are all mourning the deaths of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Rashard Brooks, Tony McDade, Ahmaud Arbery, Jacquees Clemens, and Daniel Hambrick, and many other Black lives that have been taken by police or vigilantes. And their murders put a harsh, necessary spotlight on how deeply rooted white supremacy is in our policing and criminal justice system. It is so sad that it took a video of a man pleading for his life, saying that I can't breathe, for the world to take notice of what has been happening to us in our communities forever. Even now, in this very moment, as we are protesting about unfair treatment of Black people in this country, we are still seeing the disparities in the criminal justice system. And we must reconceptualize these systems born from slavery and built on the narrative of Black criminality. As a former public defender, I have fought against all of these racist laws, policies, and procedures in the criminal justice system, from wealth-based detention, known as money bail, to sentencing laws that disproportionately impact Black and brown communities. When police officers strip searched my clients on the side of the road, when they kicked my clients in the face and lied about it, when they profiled my Black and Hispanic clients just to make traffic stops, I filed grievances and complaints against police officers to ensure police accountability, and I have advocated with the community and voted for the Police Community Oversight Board. So fighting systemic racism isn't something that is new to me. This is personal, and accountability and justice is long overdue.
Thank you. Oh, sorry. Thank you so much, Keeda. Great. So we have a bunch of amazing questions rolling in. You folks are eager to jump in, and we want to make sure we have lots of time. People, they wanna ask you their questions. So let's start with our friend Marlene Ruban. Marlene, forgive me if I am mispronouncing your last name, but Miss Marlene, what is your question for Keeda?
Hi, Keeda. My question is, there is a big movement afoot to get 18-year-olds enrolled, registered to vote so that they can actively have their voices heard. Is there anything coming up on down the pike where formerly incarcerated members of our community will be able to automatically get their rights back and be able to vote so that they don't have to go through some process in order to access them?
Yeah, so that's a really good question, and the answer, unfortunately, Marlene, is no. And that is one of the things that I definitely want to focus on, because working at my job with Free Hearts, we also work with Campaign Legal Center, and we're doing a whole campaign right now regarding voter restoration for people that have been formerly incarcerated. And just here in the state of Tennessee alone, each and every single county, even though it's a form that we have to fill out, each and every single county has different requirements that they're requiring people to have to go through in order to get their voting rights reinstated. And so, yeah, that is definitely one of the things that I would love to be able to work on and to do in Congress, is to pass legislation that has a provision for automatic restoration for people that have been formerly incarcerated once they are released from custody.
Thank you so much, Marlene, for the claps and and for Keeda for the response. Up next, we have our friend Eileen Head. Miss Eileen Head, what is your question for Keeda?
Yeah, hi. I was wondering if you I'm a speech language therapist and I work with kids with speech language problems. I was wondering if you've noticed that a lot of the people that are being incarcerated or arrested have learning disabilities and speech language problems. We've often heard about like IQ issues, but like have difficulty understanding things, have difficulty with vocabulary, have difficulty with expressing themselves. So they're not really good self-advocates. And I was just wondering if you've come across that.
Yes, so thank you for the question. And I did come across that a lot as a public defender with just dealing with various different people in the community. So yes, we would come across people all the time. And that just goes to a bigger issue when we're talking about the criminal justice system, is that really and truly, why is it that we are criminalizing people that essentially have mental health issues when we could be providing different social services for people and they don't have to come into the criminal justice system? And so that was the issue that we dealt with all the time. We had social workers in our office that were able to help. But one of the things that was interesting is that I had a client, and he was a client that I had, several times when I was there. And his trigger was police officers and sheriff department officers. And he could see them and it wouldn't be a problem. But the very second that they approached him or said something to him, then, it's almost as if like he would have, like some type of psychotic break. And so we would get him a lot because he would always be charged for like assault of an officer, because, they would approach him and they would say something to him and he would, lash out at him and various different things like that. And then we're putting him into the jail. And the sheriff's department officers are also triggers. Anybody in any type of position of powers that way were triggers for him. And so we weren't really doing him any type of justice by he was being constantly arrested, constantly putting him in jail. And, and they make a big deal out of, assaulting police officers here, when there was really an underlying issue there that we really needed to deal with. And because they considered him violent, there was really not much that we could do as far as helping him, within the criminal justice system. And so it did become a cycle for him and so many other people with issues like that.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for the thoughtful question and the thoughtful response. Up next, we have our friend Alice Liu. Alice, what is your question for Keeda?
Hi, Keeda. I was really excited to hear about the fact that you would want to have community-based programs as alternatives to incarceration. I'm curious, like what specifically might those programs be like, and how will you go about implementing them and ensuring they're successful? Thanks.
Yes, so thank you for the question. We kind of work on that now with my job now with doing community-based programs instead of incarceration. And we actually had legislation that was actually passed here a couple of years ago where we introduced what we call the primary care bill, and it actually said that if someone was a primary care of their kids, then it could be considered when it comes to sentencing, and alternatives to incarceration could be used. And so we've already been working on that. And so it really just depends on what the person has been, alleged to have done. Like being at Free Hearts, most of our stuff would be something like with moms, and they would be alleged of some type of child neglect because they ran into the grocery store to pick up something and the kid was still in the car, or something like that. And so with those types of things, what we would propose would be like parenting classes. And instead of people having to go through the criminal justice system, they could be diverted out of the criminal justice system and they could do those classes in the community. And then there's also like, we have people that are arrested for, different drug offenses. And instead of criminalizing addiction, I think that we should not be sending people into the criminal justice system, forcing them to do drug and alcohol treatment, putting them on probation, because anybody that has dealt with anybody that has any type of drug and alcohol issues, most of the time it's going to take more than one time in order for them to be clean. And so what we're doing in the criminal justice system is that we're criminalizing that. We're putting them on probation, and we're creating, again, this cycle of them coming in and out of the criminal justice system instead of giving them the necessary help that they need in the community through social service programs, through various different programs in the community that can offer them that. And then also when it comes to people that have mental health issues. But then I just think that when it comes to a lot of things that we do, there is a program that one of the judges has, but and it's a good program if it gets up and running off the ground. But the problem is that you still have to come into the criminal justice system to take advantage of this. And it's a program that she has for 18 to 30-year-old males, and they help them, with job training and resume writing and those types of things. And so we should have those things available in our community, and people should not even have to come into the criminal justice system and, have the possibility that if they don't successfully complete these programs, that they're going to end up with, something on their record that is just going to be detrimental to them in the long run.
Great, thank you. Up next, we have Jennifer Tompkins. Jennifer, what is your question for Keeda?
Hello, Keeda. Thank you for running. You are used to struggling against odds. I can see that from your history. And it sounds as if you have considerable odds to struggle against in this race. So I would like to ask you, with funders like the Koch brothers funding your opponent, what kind of support have you got within the state and elsewhere? And what do you need? I mean, this is a funding call, among other things. So can you tell us a bit about the state of your campaign?
Yes, so I am running against a wealthy white male incumbent who has been in the seat for since 2003, and he has his own money to put into his campaign. But he does, I think, like last quarter, his top 5 donors came from 3 of them came from defense contractors, and we're not taking any kind of money or anything like that. This is really a grassroots campaign. Things have really picked up over the past month. There has been an energy here in our district around our campaign. People are definitely calling for change and recognizing that, he is more of the same, and that we need, a different person in leadership in order to move our community forward and our country forward. And so, we've gotten donations, but again, this is a grassroots campaign. And so we definitely need all of the donations that we can. Like right now, he sent out 2 mailers and we haven't even sent out 1 yet. We've been able to put up signs and to get yard signs, and we're working on, getting hustle, and we're doing through talk in order to be able to continue to reach our voters here in the district. But yes, we definitely continue to need funding because, I mean, we've been outraised and we're going to continue to be outraised. But I just really believe in our campaign and believe in our issues and the things that we stand for. And so do the people in our community. But, of course, I don't have the same name recognition that he has. And so that's what we've been working on, is just really getting the message out to our voters.
Great question. Thank you, Keeda. And thank you, Jennifer. Up next, we have our friend Ben Golds. Ben, what is your question for Keeda?
Hi, Keeda. Hi, everyone. First of all, I'd also like to say thank you so much for running and for giving voice to a portion of our community that so rarely has a voice. So we really appreciate what you're doing. And I'm a big fan, a big supporter, and a volunteer on the campaign.
Thank you.
So my question is about education specifically. When I think about racial injustice and opportunity and lack of access to opportunities, I tend to think of education. And when I think about decreasing funding for policing and incarceration, I tend to think about increasing funding for education. So I haven't heard you speak very much about that, and I'm curious what you have in mind for education policies.
Yeah, so when you mentioned that, that's exactly one of the things when we're talking about defunding the police, so taking money from the police department and putting it, into other areas in our community that's going to keep us safe. Education is absolutely one of them. In my district, and I'm sure all across the country, we have been defunding education for years. And I think that with the pandemic, it has really pulled the curtain back to how poorly funded our education system is. And I think that definitely needs to be a priority because, we've got Donald Trump now talking about that he's going to withhold funding for schools that don't go back in person. And, and that's, like people should not have to worry about that. That should not be a concern when we're talking about, the education system and our kids. And so we definitely need to be funding more of the education system and making sure that all of the kids have access to, high-speed internet, that they all are having the laptops that they're going to be needing, because here we didn't have that in our district. And so it was a big issue. Like in our system here, we had, I think it was at least like a whole month that kids were not doing anything because they just could not get it figured out. There was no plan. And then when they came up with the plan, it wasn't mandatory. The kids could do it if they wanted to do it. We had, school board leaders that were wanting to extend the expulsion and suspension for kids that were suspended and expelled at that time. And, that was a big mess because I have no idea why anybody would think that that would have been a good idea. But it's not just the kids that we need to make sure that they are having access to these basic needs in order to do what they need to do. We also need to make sure that the teachers have them too, because a lot of our teachers are underpaid as well too. And a lot of times they're spending their own money buying a lot of things that they need for their classrooms because we are not funding teachers and we're not funding the education system. And so we not just the kids, but we also need to make sure that the teachers are going to have what they need going forward. And then also, a part of this is when we are talking about, the education system, and particularly now in this pandemic, and whether a parent is going to send their kid back to school or not, we also need to start thinking about what happens and what are we going to do for the parent who decides that they're going to do online learning with their kids, but their job is requiring them to come back and to be in person. And so parents are going to be in a position where, do they go back to work so that they continue to provide for their family? Are they going to be able to stay at home, with the kids, and so people are really going to be having to make these decisions about, their health and, and whether I'm going to be able to provide for my family. And I don't think that nobody should ever be put in a situation like that. So, Congress and the Senate, everybody up there needs to figure out, what are we going to do for the American people during this pandemic? The $1,200 stimulus check that was given out, it was great, fine, but, like most people, it didn't cover their rent or their mortgage, or if it did, there were so many other bills that people were having. And so, we've got people that are, just barely making it. And so when we're talking about the education system moving forward, we also need to look at those aspects of it as well.
Thank you, Ben, and thank you, Keeda. Up next, we have our friend Don Powers. Don, what is your question for Keeda?
Thank you so much. I want to give thanks to the Progressive Caucus for having this. And thank you, Keeda. Well, I'd inquire concerning this Jim Cooper. Is there any possibility, any research has been done if it's getting illicit money, illegal money that could be proven or anything? And then if you don't mind, I thought of a question while the conversation being discussed, and you're doing so wonderful, Keeda, for everybody. Is there any church involvement with your grassroots efforts, just getting out to help with your campaign as well? Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for that question. As far as whether Jim Cooper is taking illegal money, we haven't looked at that. You know, he does take money from people that we would consider questionable, but whether it's illegal or not, you know, it's really hard to say whether it's illegal or not. And as far as churches involved, yes, we do have churches that are involved, but you know, we're not having church now. So usually what people do when they're running for office, they do go around to the various different churches and you're introduced, and you know, and some of them may let you speak and actually talk about you know, your campaign and why you're running, and some of them may just introduce you. But now what we're having to do is that we're having to actually email like all of the churches here in Nashville and to see if they will meet with me to talk about why I'm running, and will at least introduce me on a Zoom call with their congregation, or will at least, you know, show a picture and talk about, you know, I'm running. And so that's the thing, like in this time, in this pandemic, we've really had to reimagine what campaigning looks like at this time. And it's been really hard. It's been difficult because I think that if we were able to actually be out and see people and touch people, that we would have picked up momentum a long time ago. But the good thing is that we're picking up momentum, you know, right now as we're going, you know, into Election Day on August 6th.
Thank you so much. Great. I think we can sneak in a few. We're on a roll here, and I think you all are having a good time. So let's keep on going. I'm going to sneak in a few more questions here. Up next, we have our friend Robert Brown. Robert, what is your question for Keeda?
Okay, so I'm coming to you from the state of Washington, quite far away, so I won't be your voter. But one of the things that's interesting to me, I had a 40-year career in teaching, and I know that states fund schooling differently, and Washington tends to do well in school funding and in paying teachers. In your role in Washington, would you try to even up the funding to states so that Tennessee would get an amount of money from the federal government that the state isn't putting in?
Yes, absolutely, I would. Jim Cooper is, you know, he likes to pride himself on being, you know, like the budget hawk. And I've spoken with several of the state reps as well as the state senators, and several of them have said, you know, if, you know, Jim Cooper would, you know, get us more money in the state, it would make our job easier. We could do, you know, some of the things that we want to do and that we need to do, but we need the help from the federal government. And so, yes, that is absolutely something that I would do. And, you know, because I do think that here in the state of Tennessee, we are definitely underfunding our school system and underfunding education. And so we definitely need to put more money in that. You know, we've had so many issues happening in Tennessee with our education system over the past, you know, couple of months, and it's the kids that are suffering the most when it comes to this. You know, we've had issues with, you know, with charter schools, and, you know, and we've had issues with school closing, and most of these schools closing are in underserved communities, and people are worried, like, how are these kids going to be getting to school? And so, you know, there are a lot of issues that we have around our education system here in this district. And I definitely will be working with people in the education system, people that have been there for years. And then, you know, we'll definitely be working with people in our state legislature to make sure that we are getting the necessary money that we need to get in this state in order to fully fund our education, so that our kids actually have an opportunity to be successful.
Thank you. We're going from education now to immigration. We have a question up next from our friend, Mr. Phil Villers. Phil, what is your question for Keeda? Oh, Phil, we can't hear you. You're still on mute. Hi, Phil.
Hi. Keeda, what I'd like to hear from you is your views on immigration, namely how we're handling it or mishandling it. And that includes asylum seekers.
Thank you for your question. And I do think that we are completely mishandling immigration. And here in this district, we have a huge population of Hispanic people, and we have a huge population of, of Somalis, here, and, we have a huge Turkish population as well, too. And I do think that we are mismanaging our immigration system. And Jim Cooper has voted to give, ICE more money. And with voting to give ICE more money, they essentially have been able to come into the community and literally try to snatch people up out of their homes. And, we've had people that have been afraid to leave their homes. We had people that were afraid to send their kids to school. And so we're definitely mismanaging immigration. I think that, immigration, they definitely don't need all of the money that they're getting, when it comes to ICE and to, the Border Patrol. They don't need all of that money that they're getting. And then we also need to create a pathway to citizenship for people. I mean, like, that's just it. Like right now, people are having to, go through so many hoops in order just to become citizens here. And people are coming here simply because they're trying to have a better way of life. And so we need to do that. And we do not need to, increase the punishment for illegal reentry. I am totally against that. I am totally against punishing people for coming here and being called and then being deported and coming back. I'm totally against that. And so that is something that we definitely need to get rid of. I mean, I'm not for punishing people when it comes to that at all. But if we have to, then, then it needs to be some type of civil penalty. And I know that a lot of times we had people that were having to go to immigration court, and there's no due process in the immigration court. And so we need to start talking about all of those things. So I think we really need to look at our immigration system, and it really needs to be completely overhauled to allow people the access to be able to become citizens and to streamline that process, because right now it's not working for any of us.
Thank you, Phil. Thank you, Phil. Thank you, Keeda. Okay, great. I'm gonna try, let's see if I can sneak in. I'm gonna sneak in another one. Keeda, we're getting a lot of questions. So our next up, we have a question from our friend, Demarius Love. Demarius, what is your question for Keeda?
Hello, hi Keeda. It's great to see you virtually.
You too.
The background together, we kind of work together in the courthouse. And so my question is, as you know, I now live and work in DC, but I still watch back home, the 5th District, very closely and things that are happening. My question is diversity. If elected, could you ensure that you would have a diverse staff that is reflective of Nashville and not just particularly those who donated?
Yes, no, absolutely. And when I win, you can come and you can work for me.
I'll take you up on the offer.
But yes, no, absolutely, because I think that that's the biggest thing, and that is, one of the reasons why I'm running is because the Jim Cooper doesn't represent who we are in this district, and as well as I do that this is a very diverse district, and that's what I want. I want to have a diverse group of people around me, because I think that when we have diverse groups of people around us, while I might be able to look at things from, the lens of being someone that is Black and someone that's being a female, but, if there's policies and legislation that is being crafted around, people, from the LGBTQ community, that's not my community. So it's good to have somebody that, that is part of my staff, somebody that I can go to and be like, hey, let's talk about this. Let's look at this and let's make sure that there's nothing, that people are trying to do that is going to have an adverse impact on this particular group of people in this population. And so, yeah, so I think, like diversity is important, and I would definitely absolutely work to make sure that I have a very diverse group of people around me.
Thank you, Demarius. Thank you, Keeda. Okay, I'm gonna sneak in one more. Okay, up next we have our friend Dr. Jerry Bricks. Hi, Jerry. Jerry, what is your question for Keeda?
Keeda, I'm coming to you from southeastern Pennsylvania, but I've got decades of connections to Tennessee, which I won't bore everyone with at this point in time. But you're going to have to deal with a lot of things as a congresswoman. But speaking of defense contractors and their support for your opponent, Bernie has proposed cutting the DoD budget by 10%, which is $74 billion. And Congresswoman Barbara Lee of California has proposed up to $350 billion in cuts to the program to reinvest in people and various and sundry social needs. So what would be your position, and what would you say to those type of cuts?
I would be signing on to those as soon as I got there. I was watching it, and I was curious to see whether this was something, particularly with, Representative Barbara Lee's, because I think hers was just a resolution. And so I was curious to see if Jim Cooper was going to sign on to that, considering that we're all in this time where people are calling for defunding the police and defunding the military, and knowing that 3 of his top 5 donors are, defense contractors. So I've been curious to see if he's going to sign on to that. He hasn't yet, and I don't anticipate that he will. But I think that we absolutely need to, cut the money, the spending that is going to the military, because, we always hear that it's going to cost too much to do this thing, and it's going to cost too much for that. But yet, we're sending all of this money and have all of this money for the military budget. And so again, I think that what it shows is that we're choosing, like the military and corporations over the American people. And that's not the way the government should be. And that's not, how it should run. And I think that that's why you are seeing, the wave of people that are running for office, the progressives that are running for office, because people are saying that we need to take back our government and we need to prioritize people over defense contractors.
Thank you, Keeda. Thank you to everyone for these great questions. Thank you, Keeda, for your thoughtful answers. We're almost out of time. Hopefully to everyone on this call, you saw why Keeda would be such an extraordinary member of Congress, and you'll consider chipping in. Keeda, to close, I have one last question for you. Okay. Your primary is August 6th. How will the money you are raising right now help you win? And relatedly, do you have any final thoughts to leave us with on the difference between you and Jim Cooper, and why it's so important for progressives to invest in this primary and invest in your race right now?
Yes. So again, thank you for inviting me to this call tonight. Thank you everyone that's joined the call. Thank you for all of these great thoughtful questions. And so what it would mean for us is that we would really be able to get our message out to our voters. We have a very, very strong message, and a message that I think that resonates with a lot of people here in this district. Again, one of the challenges is that I don't have the same name recognition that Jim Cooper has. And so that's the thing, is that, and then he's been on the ballot, and most of the time there isn't anyone that is running against him. And so now in this time, I think people are excited that they actually have another choice, and that they actually have an option, and that it's a good option. And so, yeah, so any money that we take at this time is literally money to get our message out to voters. Like I was telling them earlier on the call, like I'm trying not to micromanage everything at this point, but every conversation that I have with our team is just like, okay, if we're doing this, then what's our method and our process to reach the other voters that we're not reaching this way. And so we put a lot of thought into, what we have been doing and what we're going to continue to do this next month to continue to push our message out and to continue to grind this out. But yeah, that is really what is about getting our messages out to voters and letting them know that they have another option, and that the change that we are all calling for, that it can become a reality here in this district as well too.
Thank you, Keeda.
Thank you.
And thank you so much, Stephanie, for creating this program so we can all be here together. Folks, thank you so much to you all. We know there's a lot of stuff out there vying for your attention, and we deeply appreciate that you take the time and choose to be with us every Wednesday night. So it's my highlight of the week. I really hope it's one of yours. Keeda is an amazing woman, amazing candidate. Please consider chipping in what you can. Someone G-chatted me as we were talking, and he said, you know, I really like Keeda, you know, she needs to take her light to Washington. So on that note, let's help Keeda take her light to Washington. The donate link is in the chat box, as is my email. If I didn't get to your question, please forgive me. Email me and we will get you an answer. Keep your eyes open for the next invite in the series for next Wednesday. Until then, stay safe, stay well, stay positive, and thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you. Have a good night, everyone.
Good night.
Bye.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you all. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.